I'm going to call the June meeting of the Economic Development Commission to order. We do have a quorum, so can someone make a motion to approve the March minutes?
Motion to approve the March minutes.
Okay, great. Brooke made the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Kenny seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously. Now on to the May minutes. Can I have a motion for that, to approve the May minutes?
So moved.
All, second, please?
Second.
Okay, Brooke second. All in favor? Okay. All, passes unanimously. Okay. Is that your daughter here? It's your son. Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Okay, does he want to comment, because he's the only member of the public here?
No, he's already in the iPad.
Okay, perfect, okay. I will turn it over to you then.
All right, great. So last meeting, we went through about two or maybe two and a little bit more than that. Part of the SWOT analysis, we talked about strengths and weaknesses of the town vis-a-vis the business community. What we didn't get to was kind of the opportunities and threats portion. So kind of how we did it the last time around was, I've got some slides about it. If you want, we could touch on the strengths and weaknesses again, just kind of as a quick refresher. I don't know whether you guys want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, how will that take less than
Just a
5?
couple minutes.
Let's do that.
So I won't go over why we're doing this and how we're going to do it. The only part that I do think did hold true in our conversation was that in the conversation about strengths and weaknesses, two things were important. One is to remember that we're not talking about strengths and weaknesses of Woodbridge as a place to live, or in its kind of greater value to the universe as a whole, but its strengths and weaknesses as a place to start a business or run a business. So that was the first kind of key point that we wanted to make sure we raised. Some of that obviously trickles across. We had a little bit of a conversation about the fact that, a lot of people who live here wanted to start businesses. So the attractiveness of the town itself was one of the things that people wanted to work close to home. Again, that's kind of hard for us to optimize for, so we just kind of set it aside. The second part is a lot of these things, at least on strengths and weaknesses, were relative to what? You have to know, are we strong compared to New York City, compared to, Oxford?
Right,
So,
okay.
so one of the things that we wanted to make sure we talked about a little bit, and we ended up breaking out the strengths and weaknesses a little bit, was what are our strengths and weaknesses versus towns our size, and then we mentioned a little bit about our region versus other regions, because some of attracting businesses is getting people to come to the New Haven proper is the first argument, and then the second one is, now that we've got them in the region, how do we get them into Woodbridge? So we kind of had that as the only important part to note. So as far as the strengths and weaknesses that we went through, the main ones, and I'm going to do this again, I forgot to do last time, was, as we talked about it, our strengths for businesses is, part of it is our geography, which is that we are kind of at a little bit of the crossroads with Route 8 and the Merritt Parkway. So from a commuting standpoint, we're in a pretty good spot. Affluent community, attractive to all sorts of service and professional businesses. Obviously our school district, the JCC itself, is a draw across the region. Young families. One of the ones that I think we had a lot of conversation about was aging population. One of the things that is interesting about that, as we will then, I think, talk about later as opportunities, is that is a huge growing market in the United States. So the fact that we have facilities for an aging population, a lot of the infrastructure for it, a lot of services, that is kind of where that leads into us being a strength, is if you're in that demographic, the town is very well situated to take care of you. And obviously the Yale healthcare system right around the corner. We talked a little bit about destination businesses. We've got some in the area, but what we struggled with a little bit as we went down this list was, so do a lot of the towns around here. You know, yes, we love the brewery, but there are now, they've got breweries everywhere now. So that gets to be a bit of a challenge. So it may be more about leveraging those things than it is having them, because most people do have them. Obviously educated population, and we talked similarly about the Blue Trail and Trails system, which we said, hey, that's a great strength. But then Hamden has the Farmington River Trail. That's a tough pull. Now, they're different attractions, right? The Blue Trail is much more, you know, of a adventure sort of trail than the Farmington River Trail is. But again, as we went down this list, the ones that we left on the strength list trickled to the bottom kind of in priority order.
Okay.
Obviously, regions, we talked a little bit about kind of the attraction of our region versus other ones. So those were the main strengths. And then as we went through the weaknesses, obviously the biggest one is our budget, which is we have high taxes, and you know, we're not actually funding, as we've kind of discussed in the committee, we don't have a big budget for business development programming, let alone funding new businesses to come in, and we have a high tax rate. So we kind of have a lot of you know, bad numbers on the money side and very few good ones. We've talked about limited commercially zoned areas, no downtown. Again, one of the ones that came up that we added in was, you know, we still struggle in the town with, there are very few truck options because of the Merritt Parkway. Oddly enough, though, we're good for car commuting. It's pretty horrible for mass transit. So we talked a good bit about, you know, Metro North and Amtrak, and everything is inordinately far away. More importantly, I think, as we got down to it, is because we haven't chosen what we want to be, we're nothing. So Woodbridge doesn't kind of have a negative business climate, it just doesn't have one. People can think of different towns for being different things, but we're kind of in a vacuum. That's good and bad. I mean, it's obviously bad because nobody thinks of us when they're trying to start a business of X type. In some sense, it might be a good, because we don't have a bad position, we just don't have one at all. So we can figure out what we want to be known for. One of the things we definitely pointed out, and we've always talked about with the sign program, is people never even really realize when they are in Woodbridge. It's not clear. And not for nothing, as Betsy pointed out from some of the information from CERC, we're very small. And we're very small in a state full of very small towns. You know, 43 out of 169 jurisdictions. And we have pretty high expenditures per capita. So the region has a high cost of living, and again, the Merritt, while it's a pro relative to the region, Connecticut traffic, I suppose we're better than LA and San Francisco, but that's not saying a heck of a lot. So I think these are things about our town and its strengths and weaknesses relative to the business community. And I think the next chunk of things, and again, I threw in some that I've sent around to some of us, but the next chunk is to talk about the market itself, which, again, stating it in the terms of what we're focusing on is the business climate for small towns, right? So we're basically trying to say, what are the high-level environmental opportunities that are out there? Not Woodbridge itself. What are the opportunities in the world right now that are trends that are happening that, as a business development focused group, we should be thinking about? Like, what are the waves we want to jump on? And then we'll talk about the threats, which are the waves we want to hide from, right? So part of this analysis is to say, what are we good at? What do we think we're bad at ourselves? That's strengths and weaknesses. And now for opportunities and threats, we want to say, well, some of success isn't strengths. Some of success is finding a good wave and jumping on it, right? As a person who made it through the dot-com boom, there were a lot of really smart people that made a lot of money in the dot-com boom. There were a lot of really stupid people that made a lot of money in the dot-com boom just because they were in the right place at the right time. So there are opportunities and threats in the marketplace that we can take advantage of, whether we're strong in something or not. And that's why I felt like at the end of the last meeting we were really grim, because we're like, wow, we don't have all that many strengths and there are a whole lot of weaknesses. But I do think it's worth reminding ourselves that the strongest person doesn't always win and the weakest person doesn't always lose. So if we can tie those our mediocre strengths up with a big opportunity, we could still make a lot of difference in the town as far as the business community. So I'll go over the 6 that I've kind of brainstormed up as a kind of way to get everybody's juices going, but this is by no means the best ideas or a comprehensive list. So I think one of the opportunities that is out there is the idea of tax incentives. I think has come and gone. And in some of the stuff that I've been reading about economic development, I feel like, fortunately for us, a lot of businesses are now not just looking at tax incentives, and they're looking for a broader appeal. And I think that that's an overall trend, and from everything I've read and in some conversations with Betsy I've heard, is that there's definitely now an opportunity for kind of win-win cultural business development, as opposed to just being like, you know, here's a huge tax break, please come put your business in our town.
For instance?
Well, Amazon. I mean, look at what happened in Long Island. You know, Amazon tried really, really, really hard to make that all about money. And, you know, they bathed it in a nice little veneer of it not being just about money. But at the end of the day, you know, they had a cultural uprising that shut down the deal. And you look at a lot of these other regional areas, and, you know, I mean, clearly money matters to a lot of businesses.
They basically paid whatever money they could get to get
Right.
Foxconn, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
It is a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as local as looking at our downtown. I mean,
Right.
you want to do something and you get people.
Right, although
know?
we had a meeting with Betsy, who's gone around and,
Yeah.
And looked at other towns, and all our surrounding towns, our competition, are offering some sort of tax incentive.
And again, I'm not saying tax incentives aren't part of a program. What I'm trying to say is, I think for a while it was the program. Like, I think that in the 90s into the not years, like, that was how you did it. And I think what's interesting now is whether it's like, listen, it's a tough sell still to say, you know, there's more than just money. But I think that conversation is now actually happening. So there's an opportunity for us. There's a trend that's going on separate from Woodbridge, which is that economic development is more than just money. And I think it's, again, I didn't put these in order.
Right.
It was just one of the ones that I think it's worth noting. Secondly, there are a lot of regional and state economic development efforts here that are spending a lot of money. You know, when we look at the opportunities, it seems like there are bigger trends than what we're trying to do here in Woodbridge about trying to do job creation in both New Haven and Connecticut and all that. Again, it's rough competition, but, you know, we have there's some real money and real effort being put down in this area for regional economic development. The third one is obviously one that I'm a big fan of, which is, I think that if you look at the intersection of telecommuting and satellite offices and electronic medical records, there is and Yale New Haven's growth intentions, there's a pretty good, and the fact that we have a lot of doctors and medical practitioners living in Woodbridge who would love to work near home, there's a lot of opportunity for the broadening of the medical industry, and we have good facilities for that. So I think that's one. As we mentioned, the active adult demographic for retirees is a booming market, and autonomous cars, it's a real thing. right? So the idea of self-driving cars are expanding the commuting belt from towns and urban centers. Now, I don't imagine someone's going to hop in their Tesla and drive into New York City, but you know, Stamford and Hartford, which one would argue would be a rough commute from Woodbridge. If you can hop in your Tesla in the morning and take a nap, that might not be as big of a
You
deal.
can't really take a nap.
Huh?
You can't really take a nap.
Yeah, not yet. No, I mean, like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's today.
yeah.
You know, pretty soon you'll be able to take a nap, I would bet. And then the last one that I threw in was, we talked a little bit about helping with home offices, helping people. Like, one of the challenges that we've got, because we don't have a lot of commercial space here, is could we figure out programs and initiatives to help home businesses? Well, the actual trend underneath that is even more interesting. It's not people who want a home business. The gig economy, which is part-time work or a collection of part-time jobs, is booming. And the idea that, you know, we could support that without the traditional infrastructure of businesses, which we don't have in the town, there's an interesting match there. I don't know if it's a great one given the demographics and everything, but we do have a large number of retirees and young kids in the area. So, you know, there is a trend there, whether we can leverage it or not. The trend of the gig economy is very real. So, it's something that we could consider. So those were big trends that I had thought about. I'm not sure if there are other ones that you've heard in other committee meetings or other reports that you guys have been seeing. I remembered when I flipped through Betsy's report again, I saw some stuff about the regional consolidation of regional things like the school district. And I don't know whether that's just an us thing, or it seems like from Cirque's report didn't really say it, but it kind of insinuated that that's something that's happening all over the place.
I
And,
think
you know,
the governor heard. Did he give up on that, or is it still?
I think they backburnered it,
Yeah, the
so to
governor.
speak, but what really moved it forward significantly was the state government indicating that there could be some change that would provide less support from the state if you were not regionalized.
oh,
So there was
okay.
some-
when
there
they
was
had
some-
when they had the proposed budget cuts
Correct.
for
Correct.
Yeah.
So
But-
as a means
So
by
trying
which
to
to
nudge
do.
you.
Right, exactly.
But
So in other words, you're not saying you have to do it, but if you don't, you'll probably.
but the
get
problem was,
it's a
and I
pretty
think
good incentive.
no, the problem was why I think he got into trouble, or they got into trouble, is that he took a district like Amity, and they said, oh no, that's the wrong division.
Right.
Like, you need to go with Derby and Ansonia as Woodbridge, and so they didn't just want regionalization.
They wanted specific
They
regions.
wanted specific.
They
Like a
offered
rifle
some
shot.
ideas. They offered some ideas in
Yeah.
terms of that.
Right.
And it would have been, okay, this is what we see if you're not gonna do it yourselves. But there was opportunity for areas to do something on their own,
Okay.
such as us. And we were ahead of the curve a little bit in terms of the
Right.
way we were set up anyway.
Right.
But everyone seems to have kind of backed off on that
Okay.
at this point in time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a
Doesn't
great-
mean it's gone away.
Well, I
And
mean,
it
it
doesn't
is-
mean that there's not an
yeah.
opportunity for us to do something along those lines at some point.
Well, and I think that there's a difference between, I think one of the things we're trying to look for, what are the big waves moving through the water that we could jump in front of?
Right.
And if the wave is crested and died down, then it's interesting, but not
Let's look
really
for something
what.
else.
Yeah, let's focus on a different wave that's actually
Yeah,
growing.
I'm not sure the proposition that the proposal came out was it advantageous to Woodbridge in particular, because it took Woodbridge and put Woodbridge, I think, with Ansonia and Derby, took Bethany and put it with Naugatuck maybe,
I don't
and
know.
then took Orange and put it with Milford. So
Yeah, but
so
I think one of the
Yeah, but-
questions that, the reason I thought about it some was the generalized thought of regionalization,
Oh.
which is, you know,
Huge.
Connecticut towns are so, like,
Small.
so small compared to other economic development areas.
absolutely.
Like the catchments of most of the areas that, like, I've been out trying to read some case studies and stuff, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of them less than 40,000 people,
Yeah.
and
yeah. Eight.
we're much
Yeah,
smaller
yeah.
than that. So, you know, I think, you know, maybe along with my point too,
I'm
I
not
think
sure if economically the governor put as much thought into regionalization as he did educationally. We have CERC, we have Rex. I agree with you. I moved here from another state. I think one of Connecticut's biggest problems is the fact that we do not have a county system, a coherent county system, because the fact that you have 169 little fiefdoms, each with their own self-interests, each with their own expenses, really is not the way to grow an economy.
Yeah. But I think that in the absence of a larger force pushing that into reality, it's
Yeah.
it's it's a dream, not a
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have loved to see, as
Yeah.
opposed to the educational proposal,
Right.
I would have loved to see the governor come out and say, you know what, each of your little town halls is costing this to the state. Why don't you think of regionalizing that? And just having one central place to do most of the business, as opposed to what we have, which, I mean, I love town hall, it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go and get anything notarized I want very often, very easily. But it doesn't make good economic sense to be structured as we were. But he took on education, which I think, unfortunately, was probably the wrong chess move to make.
Right.
Because now, you know, every one of the little fiefdoms has their backup
Right.
preparing for it. But that being said, and I don't think Woodbridge has embarked on this, but some of the towns like Ansonia and Derby actually have by themselves looked at their budgets and said, you know, maybe we need to consolidate. And so I think they're trying to share services. Is Woodbridge going in that direction as well?
There's been no specific or formal conversations along those lines, no. But,
I saw something-
there are some sharing of services as relates to, for example, IT and things of that nature. But there are, you know, certainly Beth has, the Selectman's office is looking at areas where we can save by sharing with
Yeah, I thought I'd
neighboring
seen
communities.
something in the budget where they were talking about sharing fire and police resources with some of the nearby towns.
What was it, if I'm not mistaken, that was more, there may be some conversations on it,
Yeah.
but I thought it was more along the call-out people, the,
Call center.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not thinking of the term right
Dispatchers.
now. Dispatchers, thank you. Thank
Got
you.
it.
There had been some conversation about that.
Okay. So I mean, when I grabbed a business trends report on big opportunities and threats and everything in the greater business community, and obviously the number one on everybody's sheet is automation and AI.
Automation and,
Artificial intelligence.
oh,
And interestingly, they talk a lot about what are the businesses that are in the most trouble and the least trouble.
So what, I'm just curious.
Clerical. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
so like most of the thought right now is that it's been up until now robotics and automation of physical tasks has been what's been in the limelight, but the next wave of AI that everybody's expecting is going to be clerical, administrative kinds of jobs, unfortunately including lawyers. And IT, so I'm in trouble too. But I think one of the things that was interesting was that some of the jobs that are in our town are actually pretty tolerant, because senior care is one that is eminently not not automatable. So, you know, I'm not sure, and some of the educational institutions are the ones that are doing the most work in that area. But I was trying to think. I'm just thinking, what are the larger changes in the environment that are going to impact the areas? And I think that one of the struggles may be, you know, while our direct businesses may not be impacted, the impact on people who do administration in the healthcare business, you know, Aetna and all of the insurance companies, it could be pretty. I mean, and I know that that's one of the things that's been happening in Fairfield County, where my company is that a lot of those jobs are starting to disappear, and that's what's causing home value depression. So that's more, I think, of a threat than anything else. Maybe
Did
it's
you
not.
say insurance is threatened by consolidation because there's a lot of
Humans.
clerical,
A lot of clerical work.
yeah,
And healthcare in general has a large amount of clerical
right.
work, as does surprisingly the university. You know, there was the funny quote that that big educational institutions have been hiring 9 administrative people for every 1 educator for the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah,
So, you know, as that gets automated, there's a, and again, that's a downward pressure on what are white collar jobs.
Right,
So I think that's probably something that we keep in the threats column more than opportunities.
But in terms of what you mentioned as relates to the adult care,
Mhm.
is that, can we regard that as an opportunity, and how do we position it in such a way as to make it an opportunity and take advantage of it from the
Right.
perspective of bringing in business, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that could help, I mean, if we decide to focus on the active demographic and that trend, I think one of the things that may be valuable for us, if we say, okay, active adults and active retirees is a market, we need to find, I mean, I'm not by any means an expert in that industry, but there are people like that we could probably find and figure out what are the things that make that area attractive, competitive, what services are they looking for, what are the things that they want wrapped around those facilities that would make it better or worse.
right. So the one thing I noticed driving through Connecticut that we don't have, I noticed actually, because I drove to New York back and forth yesterday, you know, we have Yale in New Haven. Every surrounding town seems to have a Yale medical presence. We do not. That being said, Yale's territory is being encroached on by New York. I think Columbia Presbyterian and a couple of the other hospitals are, NYU's trying to sort of move into Connecticut. And then you've got pressure coming down from Hartford as well. Yet we are the only town that doesn't have, that I see, that doesn't have a medical facility. Why? I mean, you're a realtor. Why? I mean, maybe we need to, someone from Woodbridge needs to go to speak with Yale and say, why don't we have the blood draw, you know, the big building?
I was gonna say.
Research Park.
No, but I'm talking about, like, I had to take my son in Colorado to,
You talking like an urgent care kind of center?
I'm talking about, there are building, like in Colorado, there's a building right near the airport that Vail Valley Health, which is the hospital, took a building like our Class A office building, granted it was new construction, and my son told me that I need to get him a strep test. I walked in the wrong entrance. There was the orthopedic guy on one floor, the internist on the other floor, the cardiologist,
X-ray.
like
one stop.
one-stop shopping for
So,
your
and
doctor.
it does seem to be,
North Haven has it, in the building,
Cheshire has some.
Yeah, Long
building,
Wharf, and then Long Wharf is
Long
a
Wharf.
huge
and
facility.
Long Wharf, Guilford has it, I think.
And
What do those towns have that we don't have?
Maybe,
Some
or maybe
for the
our town
doctors
needs
to
to
go
talk
and
with some of our
Exactly,
doctors.
you need a place.
Somewhere for the doctors to go and be and entertain and all those things. We have a big building on 4 Research Drive
Yeah.
that's fully cut to be a doctor's facility,
Mhm.
and it's on the market on auction for $500,000.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No one wants to buy it.
Mhm.
So you
And
tell
what-
me,
what-
I don't know
what's
the
It must
inhibiting
mean
that
they're not
from your
shopping.
What's
perspective?
that?
What's inhibiting that?
There's
Yeah,
nothing
it
for
would be
there's no
close to
infrastructure in this
hospitals.
town to feed
Is
100
it large
doctors.
enough? Is it large enough?
That building's 30,000 square feet, and then you got 3 floors at 10,000 feet. You can definitely do some damage in there in terms of setting up doctors' offices and
Yeah.
treatments. Got a big entry, and
Well,
You
so
got the building next to it too, that's
it's got the lab infrastructure. I mean, it's got all
Is
the
that the Bayer
infrastructure.
building you're
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah.
But I mean, listen, we can find this one out, right? I mean,
No,
we
but
can
I'm
have a
saying,
follow-up thing,
but
like, I mean,
so
my-
to me,
yeah.
if we have, I mean,
No.
I'm thinking maybe I thought too fast in my mind and didn't communicate it, but if we're talking about, our aging population, and if we want that to be our growth sector, then many people don't like to drive to New Haven
Yeah.
to get their health, to get anything, let alone their health care. So why are we the one town in the area without this sort of facility? And can we have that facility, and how do we make that happen? Because that then will help us with our, our old age homes, hopefully a senior housing project. We could build upon that.
There's another dimension to this too, which is that my dad's 88, and he has the resources to age in place. And I think a lot of people that maybe have decent resources might want to stay near where their grandchildren live and be, you know, an active part of the extended family, but without being able to age in place, because you need my
You need single-story living and things like that.
for my dad's starting to develop dementia, and so driving a car is a little bit risky, and so a lot of things happen in an elderly person's life where they start losing things that they take for granted, like being able to drive and things like that. And so, like, we worry about somebody like my dad needs someone who can, like an Uber, who take him around, which is good. But we also need like nursing care, and also just like companion care, so that he doesn't like get on a bus and go to Montreal, you know, and not know where he is, that kind of thing. And I don't know if those kinds of resources, if those kinds of businesses were around here, that might open up a lot of possibilities for people not having to move out of here.
I think the good thing is if we decide that that's an area that we want to investigate, I think what we can do is bring in the CEO, bring in some of the leaders of the facilities that we have in town, and interview them and be like, what is it that would help you guys grow, be better, be more, what would have attracted you to this area, right?
So I guess the way I think about the whole thing is, if the one attractive, or not attractive, if the one plus we all know that we have in this town is the school system, and I know we talked about,
Sure.
you know, elderly care and elderly population, the rise. If we start focusing on raising the elderly population in our town, then you're gonna be swaying sort of, and I'm learning more as I'm aging in the town, but you're gonna be swaying votes on terms of like furthering the school system and stuff like that, and I think that there becomes sort of a, I don't know.
I understand, and I understand what you're getting at,
Yeah.
but what we need to consider is that it's happening. It's not, if you look at the trend over the last 8 to 10 years, our population is aging. We have as many young under 18 and over 65 as
Right.
we do any other, so it's happening anyway.
So to that point, I think that maybe it's not to focus on businesses that can come in necessarily and serve those populations, but trying to figure out how we can provide housing for those populations, because nobody wants to live in a 4,000 square foot house by themselves when they're 66, 67 years old, and without having some options for these people to downsize into, we're not going to be able to have them in our town. We don't want to wait till they're actually in the nursing home, because that
Right.
doesn't do any good, and then you're focusing on the younger families that want to be by their aging folks again.
So I think we can actually focus on both. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I'm not as concerned as you are about the voting issue on school budgets, because how many people came out to vote for
Yeah,
us
not
for
many.
school budget? Like, we have
800.
these pitiful
Less than
voting
1,000.
turnouts for school budgets, and if it doesn't get, so people just aren't even,
2,000 people, right?
well, yeah,
The
people
whole
aren't
vote
paying
was like
attention
2,000 people.
unless they're in the school system, I think, and it may be because of the way Connecticut or Woodbridge has their voting, like, why do we have our school budget the week after the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen election? So, and that may be a structural issue that works to the advantage of the school system, because people may focus on one and not the other, and then of course it's not the, you know, if that was all at the same time as the presidential election, then you may have an issue, because then people come out to vote. But I'm not as concerned, but I think we can focus on.
I don't think it's an either or. I mean, I actually agree with you as a father
Young
of two members of the Beecher community and one soon to be Amity Middle School. I think that we should be trying to do both. I think that we can say we're gonna go for the upside down bell curve. We're gonna attract businesses and try to make sure that senior care businesses are strong, and we should be doing a lot more for youth programs. I mean, because that's something we're actually really, like, in the town, there's a lot of great programs that could potentially be mirrored and done more of. I mean, the number of kids, the number of programs kids are involved in these days is staggering. But there are a large number of kinds of businesses that we don't have in Woodbridge that no one really wants to commute over. I mean, all these kids go do gymnastics in Hamden. That's 25 minutes away. Like, all we would need is a gymnastics facility here.
Rents are high.
Didn't we have a
Rents
gymnastics
are high.
facility
We had one years
down at
ago.
the flats or down?
Yeah, you meant.
And again,
your
some of
kids'
these
time.
businesses come and go based on the personalities of the people that run them. So again, our job isn't to pick a winner, right? It's to figure out the
Sure.
kinds of businesses we want and
Then attract them.
support
and
them.
then, and
Yeah, attract them and support them, right? I mean, just like,
what's
We gotta
interesting
figure out
is
where
that
to put 'em. I mean, that's the other.
when you frame it around opportunity, certainly everything we're discussing qualifies as opportunity. What's interesting, in my opinion, is what you said about the facility that's down on Research Drive, because that's tangible. That's not anecdotal. We have something that we can say, this exists. It would fit this particular scenario,
Yeah.
or potential business owner, but it's not selling. And so we have I think, a great opportunity to kind of get underneath that and find out why.
yeah.
And then finding that out would certainly help us determine what we need to change, what we need to adjust, what we need to change, that type of thing. Is it an incentive? Maybe it's a combination of a whole bunch of things that you were talking about in terms
Apparently
of
that's like
strengths.
the last building that got an incentive to be built in this
It was
town.
the
I
only
believe.
building
The
that
only
ever got
building,
it.
okay.
The only building. Like, not last. I
but
think
as
it
far
was
Well,
the
first and last.
But as far as kids programs, I mean, one of the things that's interesting is you look at gymnastics, and you're right, there's no official gymnastics place in Woodbridge. But did you know that the only circus arts facility in southern Connecticut's in Woodbridge, Air Temple Arts, is amazing. My daughter goes there, and they train people to go into like real circus thing, like Cirque du Soleil kind of things, and it's not full. Their facility is terrific. They're improving it all the time, and they're a small business
I
from
don't even
here.
know where they are.
Huh?
I don't even know where they are.
They're right there on
in
Research Drive.
They're next to.
Yeah.
It's it's an old manufacturing facility where they just strung up silks and lyra and
Well, it's not old, but yeah.
no, I'm sorry, no, but so
Is,
So I thi-
so is P2 Science not in?
P2 Science is in there. They're
It's
still in
there.
Ford Research.
Okay.
yeah.
But
So
they,
I
but
think-
they built a site for their reactor, which they actually looked in our town for. They built it in somewhere like Naugatuck or somewhere where they
Right.
could. So they're
React,
here with their
yeah.
labs, but they have their manufacturing of their whatever it is out there.
So I just think I agree that I think that it's not. I don't think it's a big trend, but I do think. Well, maybe I should have put it up there. I mean, if you look at the big pendulums in kind of movement right now, right? There are a lot of people that want to live in an urban environment, right? The whole Brooklyn thing, right? The opposite of that is adventure sports, Spartan racing. Like there's the I don't want to be in an urban area. I want to be doing different kinds of stuff, and we have a lot of open space. Maybe we should be getting into for the younger set. I mean, we have a road race, but there's no adventure racing other than Rock the Gauntlet up East Rock.
There is a kids triathlon going on this Saturday, by the way.
In
Yeah.
It's
Woodbridge?
the first start of something new.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe those are the kinds of thing. I mean, again, supporting a youth culture is kind of old hat for Economic Development Commission doesn't need to do a lot to improve youth culture. I think what we could just do is figure out how to have a couple of programs to support those kinds of
Right.
business startups.
Well, what we did in the past, I think before you were a member of the commission, is we were behind Fallapalooza. We named Fallapalooza. There were someone came to us with the Scarecrow Festival. Kate Brown, who used to be a member of the commission, and we looked around and realized there were all these things going on in town, and there was a little hesitancy because maybe they would have conflicts, and so would the road race be willing to work with the Scarecrow Festival, be willing to work with Massara Farm, and so we were very, very concerned and sort of tried to handle it delicately, and in the end, with the help of Woodbridge Rec and again with Kate in the forefront, and the JCC helping, brought it together where everybody was working together under this one umbrella, which then became Fallapalooza.
Right.
Maybe if we can identify other of these things like it, for the youth population.
Have some
I think
sort
Like
of,
the trails, like
Yeah.
Circus Arc, like whatever the soccer thing is, Tennis Central, bring them under an umbrella to help to market.
Woodbridge Plays.
Right, to market, right. To market, help them to
Yeah.
market themselves to each other, I mean, to our town and others. Maybe that's something we can,
If you think about it, like, so I've got little kids and my wife loves ice cream, and she's like, I wish I could go out for ice cream. There's
Right.
not a place to go out for
Yeah,
ice cream.
so-
But why isn't there an ice cream shop in this town? Because the rents are too high. It's purely a cash flow business. Who's going to take 1,000 square feet and pay $2,000 a month for it? So the point is, we have to figure out a way to get these
Yes.
sorts of businesses in our town and figure out a way to make it affordable for the landlords to be able to make the rents affordable. All this talk about identities and all this stuff is great, but at the end of the day, who can get into these stores that can actually make a living and actually cash flow and be happy to be here? Businesses that are working outside of our state, that are in an office, you know, doing business all over the country and within the whole state and that kind of stuff, I get. But the little business that is supposed to just cater to our community and those that are coming in and out of our town, how can they survive and pay the rents that we have to pay to be in a retail space in this town? That's the way I think about things, and our ideas are all the right ones, and I think we should focus on those things, but how can we get an ice cream parlor into Woodbridge? I
but you
think
just
that's-
said there's not enough critical mass to support an ice cream parlor, to support the
Yeah.
$2,000 a year.
Just
And
like,
that's what
I'm
your
not right.
problem is in Woodbridge.
What?
That is what your problem is in Woodbridge. I mean, if you go down Whaley Avenue, you're getting, you know, business, you have a different type of population that.
Does the rent drop off significantly when you go into New Haven?
I'm sorry?
Does the per square foot rent drop off significantly on the other side of the mirror?
Not downtown in New Haven.
No,
Yeah.
no,
No,
not downtown. I'm saying
once you
like
go down
literally.
Whaley Avenue
Whaley
and
Avenue.
go to
Like in the
Amity or
village?
go to.
Like in the
Um,
village? But they have such
Any-
a larger population, you know, they're serving from so many places. People drive up from downtown to go into the village to have brunch and things like that. The Westville Village, I'm saying.
Right, no,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
places between Westville and not
I'm just
New
trying
Haven
to
Center,
think.
but just shy of New Haven Center. It's kind
You know, like a place like Bill's Carousel owns their property, so it's, you know, they pay
It's-
No,
themselves
but what I'm
rent.
saying is between downtown, in Westville, downtown Westville, to where the Woodbridge
Right.
businesses is.
Yeah.
there-
That little stretch
At
of
one
Whaley
point,
Avenue.
that was considered almost Woodbridge.
Right.
You know, that whole area, that was the
Right.
extension. But they're so different now that, to come up further into Woodbridge, past the Amity Shopping Center, past, Katz's, where the bridge is, you know, it's
Yeah, it's,
tough to find people to support businesses that operate in there.
Let me ask you a question. And why does the Blue Chip Deli has not ventured into ice cream? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
They did.
They do have,
They did, and it just didn't
They
work?
couldn't support it.
Okay.
he's got, I think he still has some, I thought I was in there recently.
He's
and I
got
saw
frozen
some.
bars, but
Yeah.
he used to have
But it's
I mean,
not,
that would
it's
make
not.
sense that they would do that.
What?
yeah,
Or
he didn't wanna
someone
stay
moving the
open
Red
late
Barn to
either,
do
so
that,
that was
you
the
know?
other
It's
part.
funny because the Red
Yeah.
Barn-
You know, it's tough to run a business
We've
from
talked about
5
that.
The
Well,
Red
o'clock in the
Barn,
morning.
whatever, you know,
But it,
whatever
that,
the
you
address
talk
is.
about expensive.
Are there ways to end run that, like food trucks?
What's that?
Are there ways to end run that real estate
Food
problem,
trucks.
like food trucks and ice cream
Yeah,
trucks?
but I don't know how the town can tax them and take advantage of it. I don't know how that works.
No, it's just a benefit. It's, I mean, if the town were to do some
Food
sort of
truck
food truck
licenses?
food truck program to encourage, you know, to make it a thing, like food truck Saturday, like New
Maybe-
Haven does down in Longmore.
maybe have
Like licenses or
parking
something?
opportunities and stuff like that for these trucks. It could-
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I agree with you. So I think that if one of the things we may figure out is we may come up with a list of target businesses and industries we want to support. I mean, I think we're gonna have to look at the options, everything from the town subsidizing certain kinds of businesses, which I know after the clubhouse, after the
The
golf
country
course,
club.
that may not be a really
Right.
attractive
Yeah, yeah.
proposition.
Like the Burnt Bakery went out of business, and then there's another bakery after them that also went out of business, and now it's a tattoo parlor.
No, it's a nail shop.
Nail,
Yeah, okay.
excuse me. I was- there is a tattoo place next door. but-
Next door to the tattoo
Yeah.
shop.
It seems to me that you identified a
They
couple of
graduated from upstairs to downstairs, so
industries
they
that
actually grew within the
might
town.
work in Woodbridge, whether that's reaching out to the hospitals and seeing if a satellite opportunity is here. Maybe there's overflow of biotech in New Haven, and they're looking for space. But to find retail businesses to sort of come in, you there are some opportunities there, but those are tough.
Yeah.
Those are really, really tough. So what you're left with is finding bigger businesses that you could demonstrate an opportunity here in
Credit
Woodbridge.
unions, things of that sort,
Okay.
you know, more
Services-
like retail
services
Because
like
you
medical
don't have
services.
frontage, for retail space. I mean, it's not like, and you don't have a downtown area to basically say,
Gonna walk
okay,
by it, right?
and walk by it, so it's a drive-by fast thing. And to accumulate enough property, or you find an investor who has a vision and wants to share that vision in the town of Woodbridge.
Right.
We don't have that either, so,
No, I think the first idea we were talking about, why don't we have a Yale New Haven?
Satellite.
Yeah, exactly, because
And
that's a
that's
service-related business, and that it would leverage strength we already have, a lot of medical professionals here. I don't understand why.
What's the walk-in in the Walgreens Plaza?
That's just a blood drawing station.
That's
And
just
and
blood
it's a
drawing,
very
that is?
small one.
Is it?
Like,
Okay.
so
No, I'm
Hamden
just
has,
asking.
Hamden has their Yale blood drawing station is in the medical building that has other Yale medical, I don't know which practices that it has. It may be an opportune time because when, I guess, the Affordable Care Act came in, the hospitals, I think this is the timing, the hospital actually started buying practices. And so they bought a lot of local practices and brought them, like cardiologists, for instance, were
cardiologists.
brought in, and they assumed a lot of leases if they approved the location. At times they didn't approve the location. They have a pretty stringent requirement about what the building needs to look like, and those leases may be coming up, so they may be looking now to consolidate because they really do still have.
Be nice to
Enough-
know what the requirements, how they define those requirements, and what
Yeah,
they
I mean, I
find
think
attractive.
it's worth having a conversation with them, perhaps, with going in with realtors, going in with Beth, going in with whomever, using our contact with the doctors. We've got a couple of heads of the hospital in town, finding out. I have a friend who used to be in the legislature who's now working in the hospital. I can find out.
It's worth a shot.
To see what they need. The ideal building would be the Lender building, honestly. I don't know what he wants and what he's willing to
He's got
do,
a
but
museum
that's
right
it.
there now.
I think they
Yeah,
want
we'll have to
plenty of
ask.
parking. They need
And
parking.
he's got his museum. He doesn't like the in and out as much.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not
for
sure.
that.
But I know they need parking and they need access to highways. They have requirements, but if somehow we can figure that out.
But the gentleman who talked about the business park where all the medical practices are now down there, he said they've got a whole nother space that they never developed because there wasn't demand.
That was,
Right, but
Schaefer's.
but you're talking about
Schaefer.
piecemeal practices. I'm saying let's
No,
go.
but I'm saying behind that in Research Park,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Schaefer
Yeah.
has more land that he's
he's
never
got
developed.
more land that he's willing to develop.
No, right, Bruce. Yes.
Yeah.
His land. I'm not sure. His land might have an access issue.
Oh, right.
Well,
So-
it's locked in by his land, so
What?
he'd have to make access to it through his own property.
Which may
district.
be an access issue for Yale. He'd have to work on that,
You
but
can go through Old Amity too. That little
Yeah.
loop.
Yeah.
but any event. So, I don't think that this is. I think this needs to happen. We can't let it happen organically,
Right.
Because it hasn't happened organically,
Right.
And
Yeah,
maybe
clearly if they wanted our land, they would have come to us.
right. Maybe it's time to say hello. We're here.
Back on
You know,
15 and stuff.
X number of doctors of yours
Yep.
live in our town.
Right.
We have X number of patients. I don't know what we're this close to a highway. We think we'd like one of your satellite. We'd like a big satellite office.
We could also draw people from Seymour and Bethany and
No, I think you would. People are driving by every day.
Can we leverage your expertise or that of your friends and acquaintances in terms of understanding how did they select, for example, Yale does have a very huge facility, it used to be a phone company building over on Divine Street in North Haven. They bought the
Right,
property
yeah.
and then they started building, then they bought the building and then they started building it to more of a campus. How did they search and select that particular property? If we can identify who's doing that and how they're doing it, those are, I think, the folks we need to go to and see if it could be a simple matter of, I didn't know you had anything there.
We wouldn't have a size, we wouldn't be able to do it a size facility like the Divine,
No.
I mean, that's a very
No,
large place.
I agree, but I'm saying
unless
that
they wanted
there
the
was a
country
process
What?
that,
Yeah.
they
Unless they
started
wanted to
somewhere to
develop the
go
country
to,
club.
Right, right.
to end up there.
Like, I think there were practices in town, in the North Haven, Hamden area, that they bought.
Right.
And they said, we're gonna put
Put them
them
all together. and-
all
They-
together,
well,
we're
as
gonna blow out
releases-
those leases.
Right, as the leases expire, they move them over.
Right.
So it was very strategic what they did.
But it is a process. They they worked with people to get to that point. And all
Right.
I'm saying is if we can plug into what that process is and identify
Yeah.
some of the players in that process, they can give us some input in terms of,
Exactly.
if you're thinking of making yourself marketable, here's some
Right.
of the things you need to have.
Right, we
Or
need to
here's why
gather
we wouldn't even
information
consider you.
first. Yeah.
If they
Right.
say we wouldn't consider you because it's X, Y, Z, then let's see what we can do about X, Y, Z. But let's understand that so that we can, when we approach somebody, rather than just saying, hey, how would you like to take a look at some property in Woodbridge?
Right.
We've got some background and some concrete information as to either what we have to offer or why they should be looking this way.
Do we even know what property we have available for development?
I don't know that I don't know that we know it explicitly, and that's funny because when talking with Jody and Betsy, that's one of the things that I feel very strongly this commission should tie itself into a little bit more tangibly than we have over the course of the last years. We should have a better answer for that type of question. We should know very well. This commission should know very well.
But does anyone know? I mean, who knows?
How do we find
Well,
out?
we can
Jeremy,
find that
that's the
out.
question. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing or anything like that, but I'm saying it would help so much if we understood it better. If
We can identify them, it's very limited. It's not like there's a,
But I also asked, because I said, can we go to Betsy in the tax office? How do you find out who's vacant? How do you find out?
I
We gotta
guess
tell you.
vacant in
Here in
terms of
town
just
hall.
what office spaces are vacant? I mean, there's not a lot of. There's some small office. There's nothing big enough other than for research that would be vacant. There's land to build on, obviously, but then that's a whole nother story of what you can develop on. But there's not a lot of big space of it.
I
There's not a lot of big
unfortunately have
anything
a
in town, period. I
hard-
mean,
Well, a hard stop, okay.
Yeah, to go get a kid
Okay, now I understand.
from Amity.
Thank you for,
This conversation, though, I think is very valuable in terms of opportunity and identifying that particular
Yeah.
element.
is there
I mean,
anything else before you leave that you wanted to cover?
No, I mean, obviously the threats are the flip side of it, but I didn't actually fill that one in much because I think we've talked about a lot of them.
Well, I think
So-
the biggest threat is our zoning issue.
Yeah, obviously.
Absolutely.
And competition.
And we may hear
Yeah.
back from Yale, but we don't wanna
Right.
deal with you.
Right.
Because we heard you're tough and we're not gonna spend the money.
Right.
So,
Right.
if we are continue to be known as a non-receptive town
Right.
to development,
Right.
then everything we can say all this and then nothing will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
the only thing that wasn't on any of this list is farming. That seems.
Funny, I was gonna put agriculture as an opportunity
Yeah.
on here. Agriculture, in my mind, is, like you said,
An obstacle.
it's actually, it could be.
It may be
we
one of
have
the
a
only
tr-
things
we
to
have a
embrace.
significant amount of
Yeah.
open space.
Right.
Or let's say it this way, undeveloped space, because, and believe it or not, the percentage is upwards of 35%. I
Yeah.
think it's like 36-37% of the town
Is
Um,
agriculture?
is undeveloped land. And that includes town property, that includes the
Like
regional
swamp is
water,
like 20 acres or
as
whatever
well
it is.
as designated open space.
Yeah.
Conservation, everything, which is, that's 1/3 of the town. And
We
so,
should grow marijuana.
I'm not the first person who suggested that. That was suggested.
we
Pen.
would
Other
attract a
Pennsylvania,
lot
right?
at that point,
So-
the high county.
Yeah, so I mean,
But
the taxes,
in one sense, it could
Right.
be a problem, or not a problem, but it could be something that you view as inhibiting business. On the other sense, it could be an opportunity, because we have so much
Provided
undeveloped
that
space that,
people don't feel like it's touching the third rail.
right.
I guess it's a matter of figuring out how those folks that own some of that land, how they can make their
A lot of
money
that
back
land is
by.
embedded-
But
right,
the
a lot of that
other big
land
piece
is
of that is the largest portion of it is in the town.
residential space, so it's gonna be very, very
So does
difficult.
the town start
to
selling it off to?
develop Any
No, I don't know
business
that- I don't know
Does
that
that
opportunity.
work?
that's what we're
They're gonna
saying,
lease it
but-
to farmers,
They do already.
right?
They do already. So, you know, I don't know, I just, you know, for example, I don't know if, I don't know. I just say that it's there, you could either leverage it and use it for something positive, or, you know, or make it something positive, or.
Mike, I know you need to leave. The next item on, that's, I totally get it. The next, but I appreciate everything that you've done, and I think you've done such a great job that I'm
Thanks, Mike.
hesitant
Yeah,
to
well,
go for. Do you want to, I think it'd be helpful to have you participate in the next stage of this discussion,
Yeah.
which is the mission statement,
Yeah.
goals, and action items.
Yep, I agree.
So I would actually
Table
propose tabling that
Yep.
until you're back, until next
Sounds
time,
great.
because I
That's
just
terrific.
don't think it's fair to.
No, I would
to-
love
to-
to, and I mean, I think that the next step of this, which, you know, coming up with program ideas and all that stuff, I think is the whole next.
The exercise is to at some point in time present to the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanna make sure we're still on.
Okay.
Yep,
right.
absolutely.
Okay.
And I'll try to write up the notes together from some of this, and I think that, you know, having a next step where we review a document and then start coming up with program
Okay.
ideas, I think,
Okay.
and a
Are you-
mission statement and all that would
Are you
be
gonna be
great.
able to be at the July meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. I
Thank you.
apologize that I
Okay.
had to
No,
duck
no,
out
no.
early.
It's, thank you for doing.
I didn't
all
realize
this.
today, when we set up the
Thank you.
meetings, I didn't realize today's graduation down at Yale, so
Oh, okay, I
Graduation.
didn't realize.
for the medical program. So
Oh.
my wife had to be down there at it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Thank you.
Great,
Excellent. Well,
guys.
thank you.
Congratulations.
One of the things that I read in this, and I couldn't put my finger on where it was, but it resonated with me when they were doing the presentation on the CERC report, is that from a what do they call it, equivalent net grand list standpoint, from a commercial standpoint, our we have declined rather significantly. I think it's 18%. What it doesn't say is who it was and where they went, or, you know, in the sense of,
Well,
you know, obviously our mill rate has been increasing, so it kind of is counterintuitive in my mind, because living in the town, I haven't noticed a significant decline in the businesses I'm exposed to. So where did it decline? You know, what's happening, and
What's that decline based on? It's the decline of what? A decline of
value.
value.
In other words, now part of that is
Real
obviously
estate?
the values have gone down. Yes, I think the equivalent
probably
net
percentage.
grand list is more like, for example, for residential, it's like $1.2 billion,
I think
so
that's
it's the
probably
actual
it.
value.
As the residential values go down, to keep the town going, you have to raise the grand list to keep the taxes up. So the tax
And
values
mill
go
rate.
down, and
The
you
mill
gotta
rate goes up.
raise
The
the
mill
mill
rate
rate.
goes up, correct.
But I think
That's
the
it.
percentage of commercial might have gone down for a variety of reasons. I mean, retail is an issue probably internationally. It's not just here. I have a friend with a store on Lexington Avenue in New York that may not renew her lease.
But in the
because-
how old is the Urbana property?
What?
How old is the Urbana
It's
property?
probably 20 years?
No, it's not 20 years.
15 maybe 2005.
So, but I mean, we've, you know,
I thought it was.
we've increased there. I'm just, and don't get me wrong, I'm not looking, it's more rhetorical, I guess, in the sense, I would like to question CERC, and if they come back and ask us for a question, that's a question I'd like to just understand a little bit better, because it seems not to be proportionate with the residential declining values. And generally speaking, the housing prices went down. Does that, and you'll know this probably, is it equivalent? Does the commercial price come down equally? Or, because, yeah,
So it's like, I don't know if they're really.
Commercial price, supply and demand, obviously, like residential, is still in effect here. And, you just,
we haven't had anything significant move out. I mean, we've had some closings, restaurants closed, stores closed, things of that nature, but
Right.
others have come in.
There's a couple foreclosures, you know, like in that research
Now, that could be
area.
something along those
You know,
lines
I
that
mean-
that we just don't see because we're not exposed to.
You know, the
'cause
place
in
where
that area.
the doggy dig next to the pound, that
Yes.
building
Right,
got foreclosed on, and a number of the commercial condos across the street from there got
Foreclosed,
and got
okay.
foreclosed on.
Okay, that's
So it
that's
could
why I
be
was
things
asking,
like
because I wasn't
that,
sure.
And you know, the big property in the back of Bradley
Sticky
Road's
lots.
been vacant for, you know, it used to be where the trash master was or whatever, back there behind the tennis bubble. that property's been vacant forever, so I mean, that's got no value.
Is that where the car,
It's a
salon
private,
had his cars?
it's across
I don't
the
know.
street, it's diagonally across the
Where's-
street from the pound,
Okay, I think,
or like right across the street.
I can't remember his first name. The guy who-
Richie?
Yeah, Richie Sloan had his Porsches.
I don't know.
It was just, yeah, I just was
So
curious.
I'm guessing that certain things like that would certainly, bring the values
That
down
would.
to some extent.
Thank you.
Well, the property owners are still paying tax on it unless it's foreclosed.
Right, but if there's no tenant in there, I'm assuming that it brings the value down, and
Right.
the
Assessment.
property is
It's not
getting, the
sustainable.
property is also, slowly but surely deteriorating
Yeah.
if it's not being
Well, there's
used.
no personal property, so.
There's no
that-
personal property.
So
The
you're not getting the personal property tax, but the real estate value.
real estate stays,
Doesn't, it
stays
doesn't go down,
constant.
whether, it doesn't,
But the
the
va-
valuation doesn't depend upon
But the
tenant.
value of the building, the actual value of the property would decrease if it's not being utilized and has been
Right.
if
Two
it
different
was.
worlds.
But it's every 5 years, it's gonna stay the same
Right,
for.
it's two different worlds,
Right.
whether it's
Right.
occupied or not.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I think that was really, enlightening. I think Mike did a great job.
You did a great job.
I think we can discuss mission statement, goals and action items, but I really think it's best if Mike kind of leads it,
Sure.
because it's his expertise, unless anybody has something specifically they want to add at this point.
Just getting back to the discussion as relates to some of the medical, well, that type of discussion, if we can identify, any one of us can identify some resource or person to go to, I'll get together with Betsy Yagla and see about making, scheduling a meeting with the individual to start having conversation and see if we can really flesh out what's going on here and what the potentials are.
When's that bio? Was that already that? That was already.
that was
So
last
Betsy
week or
did
2 weeks
attend
ago.
that, so maybe
Maybe she's got some
she's got
contacts.
some information from that. But I'll see what I can find out.
And
Thank you.
I'll ask a friend who's pretty high up
Yeah,
there
that's what you were
at Yale New
mentioning.
Haven.
That
I mean,
sounds
maybe
good.
it's not even Yale. Maybe we go the other way and look at
Griffin.
At
you know,
York?
what? No,
At
or
York
look
or
at
Norwalk?
no, look at what's the hospital in right
Griffin?
behind? Yeah,
Griffin.
at
yeah.
Griffin.
Riven, we
They're
could,
doing a lot.
but because of the consolidation, I mean, I see New York's move, like, I think would be best, because this requires someone with a lot of stamina and a lot of ability to invest, to go, either go to Yale, if they're not interested, go to Columbia, go to Hartford, to a hospital that has a lot of resources and is looking to expand. Griffith's a great facility, but I don't think they've actually showed more interest, I think, in being acquired than expanding. So, and from what I see, because I know but I could be, maybe I'm wrong about that.
I'll definitely see them.
But I think we should start with our home.
I don't know how
home team.
the
What?
whole medical thing works, the medical industry works, but, thinking out loud, you have a hospital from Hartford wanting to make a presence in Woodbridge, Connecticut, where their doctors operate in Hartford, is not really convenient for the patient.
Well, Yale doesn't. Yale has done it now because they acquired some of the hospitals up in New London. I think.
Hospital is different than a hospital.
But they
Support.
acquire. I understand that, but they'll bring patients from all over, and they have satellite offices. So I wouldn't be as concerned, but I agree. But what I see going on in New York is they're coming into Connecticut. If you drive up and down the highway, I think there's even a sign here. Is there a sign here near Long Wharf for one of the New York hospitals? Or is there just one in Norwalk? But there are signs along the highway for the New York hospitals. So they're clearly looking.
Yeah, in Norwalk
There's definitely a sign in
Yeah.
Norwalk. I thought I saw one on the flashing billboard in West Haven, but I could be wrong about that. But those are the hospitals that are putting up the flashing billboards. Those are the ones that would be looking for spaces, I think.
I mean, I'd love to see a surgical center move into Research Park. You got the infrastructure there. I don't know if it's big enough or not, but,
Yeah, I think, well, that's not for us to determine, we can
no,
just
no,
say we
no,
have.
but that,
Yeah,
I mean, that's the kind of business where it seems to, Woodbridge would seem to do well with,
yeah, no,
you know, and people come to it for a specific doctor, you know, it's.
right, and then I think then our retail spaces can afford more ice cream business.
It's a service business, and
Attracts
people are gonna
Attracts
go, at noontime are gonna wanna find lunch someplace.
You would figure that here already, though. There's so many nursing homes and all these like palliative care centers that there's all these nurses and shifts of people that are around this town all the time taking care of the elderly folks that are living in these homes. There's so many down the flats. There's have to be
You know,
500
They-
patients, and there
the
have to
answer
be
may be, honestly.
hundreds of nurses.
We may come back to the busing issue, the bus issue, and, I wouldn't be surprised. Public transportation may be the issue.
that like we should put.
Because we can't get the bus route.
They have little buses that bus people are not.
No, but people need, many of the workers need access to public transportation. Because our bus route only goes up to Lucy Street, and doesn't get to Bradley Road, we may not be attractive. I mean,
Possible.
I don't know, but it's worth
possible.
asking. It's worth having the conversation,
Because I mean, for the
and we
last,
shouldn't be surprised if that's the answer.
for the last however many years, I always thought that a little sandwich place that had, you know, breakfast in the morning and then like had ice cream at some point during the day would be perfect for that little 1,000 square feet. That was the old Dermer shop. I don't know why in the world this
In the
just
middle of
doesn't.
nowhere.
Everything's there. You've got the.
Does Jim want,
You know where Dermer's clothing was?
does he
right at
want food?
245.
I guess he already has food in there.
No, they'd be fine. It's not the. It's
Yeah,
not the.
yeah.
The owners. It's just I don't know why. I think that would be a great use over there. It'd be something for the town to use. That's not you know to deal with the war going to Starbucks and things like that. And it's got seating area and a little nook you could sit outside. And I think there's a lot of service people in that area that would certainly frequent lunch places and things like that. I don't know.
I don't
Stuff
know.
to explore. It's worth this commission exploring topics like that and trying to figure out the reasoning, and then sort of maybe backing into it from saying what are the
Right, but I think it would be.
what don't we have and why.
But I think it would be helpful to move in parallel tracks and try to get information, since we're starting the discussion.
I think
From
so.
your contacts, from my contact, to see why they're not looking
Okay.
here. So the next item Betsy really wanted us to talk about would be potential speakers, locations, and dates for Economic Development Forum, State of the Town. Anybody have any ideas? I mean, sort of abstract. We can also table this again and wait for Betsy to come back, because this is really her where she would like to put emphasis. She would like an opportunity to present economic issues to the citizens, to the businesses in town. So if anybody has any idea of speakers, locations, or dates, that would be great. Maybe we actually see if we can use, I don't know what it's called now. We call it the Big Yellow House. The senior living facility has a nice room. The Marriott probably has a nice room. Maybe we start going into see if we can use those facilities. It used to be the Marriott. Now it's got another new sign. It started as a Marriott. Yeah, no, they changed their name. But we do have next week, if you guys can make it, shouldn't put this on the agenda, but wait, I just want to, sorry, I have to pull it up on my calendar. On Tuesday, we have a EDC breakfast meeting at the Palestinian Museum. At the Palestinian Museum in
Lender's old building.
Lender's old building. I don't know the address. But we're gonna. Do you have the who's gonna be speaking at? I don't remember. I know it's 8:30 on Tuesday morning. Sort of a networking opportunity, and I think Beth will be there.
I have it on my calendar. I'm gonna try to go.
What?
I have it in my calendar. I'm
Yeah,
definitely
I mean, I think it would be helpful to get more of us there.
Yeah.
Again, this is something that Betsy's leading, and taking the initiative on. But if we can all be there and she's gonna, she invited, I believe most of the businesses in town. And they're, you know, we can,
This is actually, she's put together some brochure, the brochure that.
oh, wait, it was a trail map, this is.
It's a
yeah,
trail map and a list of the retail, so she's invited the people who are listed on the retail for them to look at the brochure and to also input on it. Is, you know, did we get something wrong, is your telephone number wrong, things of that nature. And also to input, see if there's anything else we wanna do. Apparently, they've, most of them have accepted. And the space, she, you know, wanted an opportunity just to showcase the space. He's got vacancies. And, so that's.
And whoever, if you've not been to the Palestinian Museum, I
I've
encourage
not.
you going.
Didn't even know it was there.
Oh,
myself,
it's
so.
actually really incredible,
Yeah, so.
what he's trying to do
Yeah, it's neat in there.
there. And it's a nice space, and the artwork is really interesting. So, in any event, so that, yes, that's, Tuesday morning at 8:30. I'm sorry, I've forgotten it was the trail map, so
Yep.
it wasn't on here. Okay, so anybody else have anything else they want to add to this discussion at this point?
I just wanted to, just to make sure the speakers that she was referring to in the date for that event, I remember a couple of meetings ago, we were talking about doing something in the fall, similar to what, similar to the meeting that Jamie had attended. That's what that's about?
I think that's what that, about, without Jamie, it's, again,
Okay.
it's hard to discuss it. Although I'm not sure Jamie's staying on the commission.
I don't know.
Yeah. So yes, so they have an idea of what they want to do about getting some speakers in to, maybe 2 speakers, and to have a forum for businesses in the town. Again, I think it's more of a regional economic perspective, just really to give people something. We're not looking to take from the businesses, we're like looking to give them information and a reason to being there and something that they would want to hear. So,
Maybe categorized
the,
the businesses, so maybe have a breakfast or whatever for, you know, the retail people in town, and versus the manufacturing people in town. And maybe we can draw some information from them, the professional people in town.
the problem with that is, we typically pay for the breakfast, so it's out of our budget, and we only have a budget for one group. So,
I'd love to see this town do a town hall with someone like Mike moderating it and having some key people from the town, even like, you know, Jody and then a couple other people that could sit up there and answer, get the local businesses and property owners together, let them voice their questions and concerns over things that we think are important, have some topics, just make it an open forum and really use it as a think tank to try to figure out what everyone else is seeing instead of us in a little box in the room. It'd be nice to see what everyone else's outlook is. You know, I know the survey sort of serves a purpose and everything, but direct questions and being in a room and spurring conversation tends to, I don't know, shed some light on.
right, the only, I mean, having experienced my first breakfast
it could
with,
be hairy.
with, when the town implemented signage issues that that the business owners did not like. The problem is that to have an open setting like that can be pretty hostile.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So unless you have a really good moderator,
Yeah.
it could
I'm sure.
easily turn from a sort of
I hear you.
brainstorming session into a griping session.
Well, it could be an invitation only sort of thing where it's not
No,
necessarily.
then it
inviting
doesn't
people,
make any
like-
sense, because then you're just having people, yes, I mean, yes, I agree, you want the open dialogue.
Well, I'm not saying I want like residential, you know, people
No,
that
no,
just
no.
own homes in town to be there, but all business owners and landowners, and let them. I mean, I get it. I totally understand what you're saying. I just think that like somehow something's got to be figured out one way or the other.
Just for whatever it's worth, sometimes offering an opportunity for people to gripe isn't the worst thing in the world. You get some real input. you
No,
know?
I'm just,
So, but yes, I understand
just saying you have to have the right moderator, and you have to have the right personalities.
No,
So
I hear you.
I'm perfectly happy to have people tell me their concerns, and I think that I can handle it. Personally, I've seen other people, you know, depending on who we have on the commission, who we have outside of the commission, who are pretty belligerent when they're spoken to.
No, yeah,
And it can really devolve very, very quickly.
I was just thinking,
So-
like to your point, that like that some of the smallest voices are the loudest ones. It'd be nice to hear from some of the smaller, some of the smarter voices or whatever you want to. I don't know.
It would be great, but perhaps we can do more of that open forum once we have a mission statement, and once we define where we want to go.
Okay.
I don't know that we need. I love input.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
But I'm not sure. I mean, if people think that we're going to get more information to help with our mission statement, then it's worth it. But I prefer to have something to roll out to people.
No, I totally agree. I was going to do it tomorrow.
To comment, to give them the plan, and then to comment on where we can control the agenda a little bit, then just say, okay,
Oh,
tell
no,
us what's wrong with the town.
No, I'm not saying to do it tomorrow. And to actually have a formal plan.
Yeah,
put
no, I
something
think
together
that's a great idea. Once there's a mission statement and we have an idea of the direction where we're going to go, then to get buy-in from the community is really, really important. And to get their feedback on where, because our mission statement would not be, a drill down menu. It would be pretty broad.
Yeah, no,
So then we can roll that out to them, and then we can, within that confines, I think we could handle the conversation, and maybe just have commission members and Beth be the people fielding the comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love participation. Just
It's an interesting thought. I think it's be interesting to pursue it to some extent, talk to Betsy, because I actually see it a little bit more inclusive in terms of, obviously, the commission represented, with Beth represented, but TPZ, have the chairman or representative from TPZ, who knows a little bit, and yes, I know it can get volatile, but like you said, if you have the right moderator and you can control it and you make it clear what we're there for, additionally, it's limited. You know what I mean? It's a morning meeting. If people come in at 8:30, by 9 o'clock, they're done in 9:15. So there's only so much.
We're not talking about 7 p.m. prime time.
So that might not be. So it's but
Right.
I think there's some validity to it.
I think what Betsy's thinking about is a little bit more sooner
Right.
than that, though.
Yeah.
So, but I'll let her think of, when we, in July, maybe she'll come to us with some ideas on what, who she's envisioning speaking. Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. We have a quorum, we can add anything we want. Oh, no, we have a quorum left, no, we can't add anything. Sorry. Sorry. We had a quorum for an hour.
No, it's not there.
Well, we got the agenda, the minutes approved. Can I get a motion to approve, please? Sorry,
adjourn.
to adjourn?
We want to
I'm
adjourn.
sorry. A second? Okay. So Kenny first.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Brooke second, and all in favor? That passes unanimously at 8:24. Jeremy.